There is a sound every man hears, but few ever question. It's the sound of a clock. Tick, tick, tick. From the moment you were born, it has been counting. Counting your age, counting your years, counting what you've done and what you haven't. And slowly, so without asking your permission, the world taught you what that sound means. It told you that time is running out. It told you that if you didn't make it early, you probably never will. It told you that success belongs to the young, strength belongs to the fast, and purpose belongs to those who figured life out early. So now, at this stage of your life, that clock doesn't just tell time. It judges you. It whispers to you late at night. It talks to you when you're alone. It speaks when no one else can hear it. It says, you're behind. You missed it. You should have been more. You should have done more. You're too late now. And if you're honest, some days you believe it. Because society has a lie it loves to tell men. It says if you haven't made it by 30, you're already behind. If you haven't built something solid by 40, you failed somewhere. And if you're not wealthy, respected, or settled by 50, then that's it. Game over. You're told your prime is past, your window is closed, your best days are behind you. And maybe you feel that weight right now. You look at your hands and think, these hands should have built more. You look at your reflection and think, I should be further than this. You look at your past and replay decisions. The job you didn't take, the business you didn't start, the discipline you didn't have, the relationship you mishandled, the years that slipped away while you were just trying to survive. And quietly, painfully, you start to believe the clock has beaten you. But listen to me, the clock is lying to you. Because the clock is a human invention, but purpose is divine. God does not consult calendars. He does not panic over birthdays. He does not rush because of age. God is not impressed by speed. He is interested in alignment. And here's the truth most men were never told. God does his best work when man thinks it's too late. When the world says expired, God says positioned. When society says missed your moment, God says you're right on time. Because God does not measure life the way men do. Men measure life by years. God measures life by obedience. Men ask, how old are you? God asks, are you ready? Men ask, how long did it take? God asks, did you trust me? And that's why some of the most dangerous men on earth are not the young ones. They are the older men who finally understand this truth. Men who have been broken, men who have been humbled, men who have failed, fallen, lost, and survived. Because pain teaches what comfort never can. And this is why a man like Denzel Washington speaks with authority. Not just because of fame, not because of awards, but because of alignment. True desire in the heart for anything good is God's proof to you sent beforehand that it's yours already. Think about that. That desire you still feel. That dream you thought you were supposed to outgrow. That quiet pull in your spirit that refuses to die. That is not an accident. That is not nostalgia. That is not foolishness. That is evidence. Evidence that God hasn't closed the book on you. Because God does not tease men with purpose. He doesn't ignite desires. He doesn't intend to fulfill. If the fire is still there, the assignment is still active. And let me say this clearly, especially to the man who feels tired, discouraged, or forgotten. If you are breathing, God is not finished with you. Breath is proof of assignment. You are not still alive by coincidence. You are alive because something remains unfinished. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are in preparation. And sometimes God delays the promise not because he wants to punish you, but because he wants to protect you. Protect you from success arriving before character. Protect you from blessings you weren't ready to carry. Protect you from elevation without foundation. So before we go any further, before you let that clock speak again, I want you to hear this. Your story is not over. Your calling did not expire. Your season is not past. This moment, this stage of your life may be the very beginning, because in God's timeline, it is never too late. Failure has a sound. It's quiet, but heavy. It's the sound of doors closing, the sound of people stopping their belief in you, the sound of expectations dying, sometimes your own. And for many men, failure doesn't arrive all at once. It comes slowly. A job that didn't work out, a business that collapsed, a marriage that slipped through your hands, years spent working hard but going nowhere. And eventually, you start asking yourself the question men rarely say out loud: did I waste my life? You don't ask it in public. You don't say it to your friends. You don't say it to your family. But you think it late at night, in silence. And the dangerous part about failure isn't the loss. It's the conclusion you draw from it. You begin to believe that your mistakes disqualified you, that your past discredits your future, that because you fell short, God has moved on to someone else. But let me tell you something most men never hear. Failure does not cancel calling. It often reveals it. And to understand this, you need to hear a story before the awards, before the fame, before the voice that commands respect on every screen. Denzel Washington was a young man going nowhere fast. He wasn't winning. He wasn't focused. He wasn't impressive. He was flunking out of college with a 1.7 GPA. No plan, no direction, no clear future. By society's standards, he was already falling behind. And one day, he found himself sitting in his mother's beauty shop, not on a stage, not in a spotlight, but in a small, ordinary place, surrounded by hair dryers, mirrors, and conversations that had nothing to do with destiny. And that's important, because God rarely speaks in dramatic moments. He speaks in ordinary places. While Denzel sat there, confused, embarrassed, uncertain, a woman walked up to him. She didn't know his future resume. She didn't see awards. She didn't see Hollywood. She saw something deeper. And a woman looked at him and said, "Young man, you are going to travel the world and speak to millions of people." Think about how unreasonable that sounds. A flunk out, a 1.7 GPA, no platform, no proof, and yet a prophecy. Why? Because God does not wait for your resume to match your destiny. He speaks before the evidence appears. And here's the part you need to hear clearly. That promise did not come when Denzel looked successful. It came when he looked like a failure, because failure is often the soil where purpose grows. When everything you leaned on is stripped away, pride, confidence, self-image, applause, God finally has your attention. And many of you watching this are in that exact place. You feel invisible. You feel embarrassed by your past. You feel like life passed you by while you were just trying to survive. You look at younger men winning and quietly wonder what went wrong with you. But what if nothing went wrong? What if the delay wasn't denial, but development? What if God allowed you to struggle so you wouldn't mistake success for identity? What if He allowed failure to build humility, patience, and wisdom you could never learn in comfort? Because listen to me, God does not anoint the image, He anoints the man. And the man must be ready. That beauty shop wasn't a random location, it was a reminder. Your breakthrough doesn't need a stage. Your calling doesn't need an audience. Your destiny doesn't need approval. God can speak your future in the middle of what looks like embarrassment. And here's something powerful. Denzel didn't become who he was overnight after that moment. The prophecy didn't erase the process. It gave him direction. Failure didn't disappear, but purpose appeared. And that's what some of you need right now. Not instant success, direction. Because when direction is clear, endurance becomes possible. Let me say this slowly. You are not a failure because something didn't work. You are not a failure because you fell short. You are not a failure because you're still figuring it out. Failure is an event, not an identity. And God specializes in men who look finished to the world. Moses was hiding in the desert. David was forgotten in a field. Joseph was in prison, and Denzel was sitting in a beauty shop, flunking out of college. If God could speak destiny into those moments, He can speak into yours. And here's the shift you must make. Stop asking, why did I fail? Start asking, what is God building in me? Because sometimes God has to break your old vision before He gives you the right one. Sometimes He has to empty your hands before He places purpose in them. So if you're watching this feeling behind, ashamed, or discouraged, hear this truth. You are not buried, you are planted. And what is planted may look forgotten, but it is preparing to rise. One of the most dangerous lies a man can believe is that time has beaten him. That somehow, because the years have passed, because the mirror looks different, because the body is slower, because the world celebrates youth, God has moved on without him. So many men don't quit because they lack ability. They quit because they believe they are late. Late to success, late to purpose, late to becoming who they were meant to be. And quietly, without telling anyone, they retire in their minds. But the Bible tells a very different story. Because in God's system, late is often the signal that preparation is complete. And there is no better example of this than a man named Moses. Before Moses became a deliverer, he spent 40 years thinking he was somebody. Raised in Pharaoh's palace, educated, powerful, confident, he thought destiny would come through strength, speed, and position. Then, in a single moment of anger, he made a mistake, and everything collapsed. He lost his status. He lost his future. He lost the version of himself he believed in. So Moses ran. And for the next 40 years, he lived in the desert, anonymous, forgotten, tending sheep. 40 years, no spotlight, no progress, no applause, just silence. And here's the part most men miss. That desert was not punishment. It was training. Because God cannot use the man who still trusts his own power. At 40, Moses was confident but dangerous. At 80, Moses was humble and ready. And that's when God spoke. Not when Moses was young, not when Moses was strong, but when Moses was old by human standards. 80 years old. And God said, "Go deliver a nation." Think about that. Most men today think life is over at 50. God started Moses' assignment at 80. That should shatter every lie you've been told about age, because God is not impressed by speed. He is committed to formation. Men rush. God shapes. Men want quick success. God wants lasting impact. And here's why God waits. Because purpose without maturity is dangerous. If God gave you everything you prayed for at 25, it might have destroyed you. If He elevated you at 30, pride might have ruined you. If He gave you power before wisdom, you might have hurt the very people you were called to help. So God waits, not because He is slow, but because He is precise. And the same pattern shows up again and again. Abraham was 75 years old when God said, "I will make you a great nation." 75. Caleb was 85 when he stood in front of giants and said, "Give me this mountain." 85. These men didn't shrink with age. They expanded because they understood something modern men have forgotten. Life is not a race. It is an assignment. And when you see it that way, you stop panicking about being late. You stop comparing timelines. You stop measuring yourself against younger men. You stop letting society rush you into despair because you realize God waited until you were ready. Ready to handle pressure. Ready to manage people. Ready to lead without ego. Ready to succeed without losing your soul. Hardship teaches lessons ease never will. Hardship builds depth. Hardship builds discernment. Hardship builds strength that doesn't collapse under pressure. That's why your struggles were not wasted. The years you thought were lost were actually investments. You learned patience, you learned restraint, you learned how to survive disappointment. You learned how to stand when things don't work out. And that makes you dangerous in the best way. Because now you are not driven by ego. You are driven by purpose. Now you don't need applause to move forward. You don't need validation to obey God. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. And that's the man God uses. Let me say this directly to you. If you are still alive, you are still eligible. Your age has not disqualified you. Your past has not disqualified you. Your failures have not disqualified you. They have qualified you. Because only a man who has walked through fire can lead others through it. Only a man who has been humbled can handle authority without abusing it. Only a man who has waited can appreciate divine timing. So stop calling yourself late. Stop saying, if only I had started earlier. Stop punishing yourself for what you didn't know then. You didn't miss your moment. You were being prepared for it. And here's the final truth of the Moses principle. God does not start when you feel ready. He starts when you are ready. Not physically, not financially, but spiritually. So, if you feel the stirring again, if the desire hasn't died, if the vision keeps returning, that is not regret. That is activation. Your season is not over. It may have just begun. Waiting is one of the hardest tests God gives a man. Not because waiting is painful, but because waiting feels silent. No applause, no confirmation, no visible progress, just time and questions. And for many men, the waiting season is where hope begins to fade. You prayed, you tried, you believed, and yet nothing happened. So you wait. And if you're not careful, waiting turns into frustration. Frustration turns into bitterness. Bitterness turns into resignation. You stop expecting, you stop dreaming, you stop preparing. But hear this clearly, waiting on God is not inactivity, it is strategy. Because the waiting room is not where God forgets you, it's where He forms you. Most men misunderstand waiting because they think God is delaying the promise. But God is not delaying the promise. He is preparing the person. Because if the blessing arrives before the man is ready, the blessing becomes a burden. And that's why God hides some seasons from applause. He works in silence. Think about this. Seeds grow underground. Muscles grow under resistance. Character grows under pressure. And calling grows in waiting. This is why Denzel Washington speaks so clearly about discipline. Not because discipline is exciting, but because discipline sustains purpose. A dream is something you talk about. A goal is something you work toward. A dream lives in your head. A goal lives in your schedule. And while you're waiting on God to open a door, He's watching what you do while the door is closed. Are you sharpening your skills or sharpening your excuses? Are you building discipline or building resentment? Because waiting seasons reveal who you really are. They strip away motivation and leave only commitment. And commitment is what God honors. Waiting is where you learn to show up without validation, to pray when nothing changes, to work when no one claps, to stay disciplined when results are delayed. And that's where many men quit, not because they can't do it, but because they don't want to do it unseen. But God does His deepest work in secret. Before David wore a crown, he learned responsibility watching sheep. Before Joseph wore authority, he learned integrity in prison. Before Jesus stood before crowds, he spent years in obscurity. Waiting was not wasted, it was essential. And here's the truth men need to hear. God does not prepare blessings for lazy vessels. If you want God to elevate you in your career, are you improving your competence while you wait? If you want God to restore your marriage, are you fixing your temper, your pride, your listening skills? If you want God to trust you with influence, are you learning humility in private? Because God pours oil only into vessels that are ready. And readiness is built in waiting. Let me make this practical. Waiting does not mean sitting still. It means intentional obedience. It means waking up early, even when no one is watching. It means reading when scrolling would be easier. It means training your body when quitting would feel justified. It means praying when silence feels uncomfortable. Waiting is where discipline replaces emotion, and discipline is faith in action. Because faith isn't just believing God can do it. Faith is living like He will. And that changes how you wait. You don't wait passively, you wait purposefully. You don't complain, you prepare. You don't ask, why isn't it happening yet? You ask, who must I become before it happens? That's the waiting room strategy, becoming the man your future requires. Long before the world applauded Denzel Washington, he was perfecting his craft in obscurity, learning, failing, improving, no shortcuts, no entitlement, just consistency, because consistency is what separates men who dream from men who deliver. And here's a hard truth. Some men want elevation without preparation. They want results without responsibility, but God doesn't work that way. He prepares you before He presents you. And if you're honest, you already know this, because the moments you regret most are the moments you weren't ready. So God protects you by making you wait, not to punish you, but to strengthen you. Waiting seasons teach you patience. They teach you restraint. They teach you how to manage disappointment without quitting. And those lessons matter, because the next level will test you more than the current one. So if you're in a waiting season right now, don't waste it. Don't numb it away. Don't complain it away. Don't escape it. Use it. Use it to grow. Use it to mature. Use it to refine your habits. Because one day, the door will open. And when it does, you won't rise to the level of your dreams. You'll fall to the level of your preparation. So prepare. Prepare your mind. Prepare your body. Prepare your spirit. And when God moves, you won't panic. You'll be ready, because waiting didn't weaken you. It built you. And that's the secret most men never learn. There comes a moment in every man's life when he must decide what time really means to him. Not what society says, not what his past whispers, not what fear has repeated for years, but what he believes. Because time can either become your excuse or your testimony. Up until now, the clock may have felt like an enemy, a reminder of what didn't happen, a record of what slipped away. But today, that clock loses its power. Because the truth is this: you don't need more time, you need alignment. And alignment changes everything. Alignment turns age into wisdom. Alignment turns scars into authority. Alignment turns waiting into momentum. This is where many men get it wrong. They say, if only I were younger. But God says, if only you were ready. They say, if only I had started earlier. But God says, now you understand. They say, I missed my chance. But God says, I protected you until now. Because success without maturity is dangerous. Power without discipline is destructive. Blessing without humility is temporary. So God waited. He waited until your ego softened, until your patience grew, until your priorities changed, until you cared more about purpose than applause. And now, you are standing at the right moment, not because life has been easy, but because it has been shaping you. Every disappointment taught you resilience. Every delay taught you endurance. Every failure stripped away illusion. You are not the man you were 20 years ago. You are stronger. You are wiser. You are steadier. And most importantly, you are awake. Awake to what matters. Awake to what lasts. Awake to what God has been preparing you for. This is your new timeline. Not the world's timeline. Not your neighbor's timeline. Not the one you see on social media. This is God's timeline, a timeline where delay is not denial, where waiting is not wasting, where age is not a limitation, but a qualification. And now the responsibility shifts, because inspiration without decision fades. If you walk away from this moment unchanged, the clock will start talking again. But if you decide today, truly decide, everything changes. So here is the question you must answer. What are you going to do with the life you still have? Not tomorrow, not someday, not when conditions are perfect. Now, because obedience always starts with action. Not loud action, not dramatic action, but committed action. One disciplined morning, one honest conversation, one skill sharpened, one habit broken, one prayer prayed with belief again. This is how God moves men forward, step by step, day by day, faith by faith. And hear this clearly. You do not need permission to begin again. You do not need approval to change direction. You do not need to explain your obedience to anyone who isn't walking your path. God already approved you when He kept you alive. Life is a gift, not a race, not a competition, not a scoreboard, a gift. And gifts are meant to be used, not regretted. So stop punishing yourself for what you didn't know then. You didn't fail because you were weak. You struggled because you were learning. You weren't delayed because God forgot you. You were delayed because He was shaping you. And now, the waiting season has done its work. Now, it's time to move. Not recklessly, not arrogantly, but obediently. This is where you stop watching motivational videos and start becoming the man they talk about. This is where faith turns into discipline, where prayer turns into preparation, where belief turns into action. And to mark this moment, to make it real, I want you to do something simple but powerful. Not for me, for you. Type God's timing in the comments, not as a slogan, not as a trend, but as a declaration. A declaration that you are done arguing with the past. A declaration that you are done rushing the future. A declaration that you trust the process that shaped you. When you type it, you're saying, I am not late. I am not behind. I am not finished. You're saying, my life is still under construction. My calling is still active. My best days are still ahead. And from this moment forward, stop looking backward. You're not going that way. There is work ahead of you, purpose ahead of you, meaning ahead of you, and God has already gone before you.